Hello, my name is David Braben. I'm chairman of Frontier Developments, and we're here to talk about Lost Winds, Winter of the Melodias, the sequel to the original Lost Winds game. Many years ago at Frontier, a guy called Steve Burgess, who you may see in the shop behind me, came up with the idea of doing a game about the wind. We lived in a farmhouse outside. The wind blew the leaves, the blossom around, and it looked really beautiful, graceful, the way it carried things up into the air. And Steve wanted to do a game about that. The idea for how the wind control would work was there from the start, but actually getting it so that it feels right is quite a challenge. You naturally expect wind to do certain things, but that's not necessarily what a game control does. So that, for example, if the wind misses you, you expect it to sort of make the character Toku tumble slightly to one side and all that sort of thing. So it's actually quite complex the way the control works, but beautifully simple in the way you use it.
Lost Winds Winter of the Melodias is a puzzle platformer game where the player plays as a young boy called Toku, who has to explore the world of Mistralis, and he's guided by a wind spirit named Enril. Enril is the Wii remote, and Toku is the nunchuck. The difference between the wind spirit and Toku is that Toku's a physical presence in the world, so Toku can grab onto switches and levers and pull and things like that, whereas the wind on its own isn't any good at kind of grabbing hold of things. So by working together, they're able to solve different puzzles that they wouldn't normally be able to do on their own.
A key power in the game is you can control the wind, and obviously the wind controls a lot of the world. It affects everything in the world. Everything in the world has to be interacted with the wind that you can control. So, you know, whether it's pollen from the grass and power-ups coming from the trees and the breeze, everything.
We really try to set the tone right from the very beginning, both for players who are coming back and new players.
The first Lost Winds game was very successful for us, but when we first sat down to design it, what Steve had in mind, a whole world, a sequence of adventures that we could do within that world, involving different spirits, different things for the player to do. And so the first game was essentially the first part of that. We had a lot of ideas. In fact, eagle-eyed people who may have seen some of the discussions, the making of the first game, you will see that some of the concepts were actually in the concept art that are in the second game, like Cyclone. The reason we wanted to make a second game was really to carry on the story.
The storyline is explained as they go through. You don't need to have played the first game to enjoy the second, although obviously we'd like you to play the first game as well. The story from Winter of the Melodias continues from the first game. Toku's discovered that his mum has gone missing, and that's one of the core threads to the story. And obviously he meets new characters and discovers new enemies and explores new places.
Everything in the background is telling a story. If you actually take the time to play through, you'll see that there are various elements that start to come together, and it's a fantastic revelation when you actually get to the end of the game and you have this rich tapestry that you kind of wonder where on earth did that come from?
The biggest new additions to Winter of the Melodias is the season changing, which basically allows Toku to move differently through the world. But also winter means that some areas that were open are now blocked off. For instance, pools of water, they're solid, which means you can't swim under them. So you change it to summer, which means you can now move into different areas of the world.
When we went back over the first game, looking at the graphical side of it, we saw a huge amount we felt we could really improve on. One of those was including a much smoother look and polished feel to the landscapes. Certainly we spent an awful lot of time looking at ways we could improve the effects. You'll see a lot more in the way of particle effects that really do enhance the whole gameplay side of things. We did an awful lot of testing on textures, and colour palettes certainly were a big issue because we were trying to balance two completely different looking environments in terms of the season changes. We went for a whole new level of finish on this game.
I think the first game it was great because you were exploring a world. Now we're doing a second game. We've actually made the world bigger, and I think one of the things that people found a bit of a challenge was the problem getting lost. But having said that, we've now got a map in, so we've made that a lot easier. Because the worlds are now so much bigger, we feel we need it. But exploration is still there. The map is only very, very rough.
We've invested an awful lot in the detail of the landscapes to try and suggest that maybe there's areas you could possibly go to, you're not too sure, but there's always that intrigue, the kind of little nooks and crannies that just make you want to go a little bit further. And you're finding out, you're discovering the landscape.
On top of this, we've also added 2 powers for Enril. The first being Cyclone, which allows you to lift Toku to higher places, but it also means that any volumes of water, you can actually drain them, and by doing so you create a cloud, and that cloud can be moved to a different area of the world. Another power that she's got is Cold Chill, which allows you to freeze enemies. In Winter Melodias we introduced 3 new enemies. There's the red glob and the blue glob. The other type of enemy we have is the Garb, which is basically a giant glob who likes to eat things, including Toku.
We put an awful lot of ourselves into this, and a lot of our own humour comes through in the animation, the way the characters interact, and certainly the sounds as well. Again, you'll find there's a few funny things going on there. The sound is probably one of the biggest, most important factors of the game in terms of bringing the player in to the world.
The beauty about WiiWare is it means as a developer we can bring it directly to market. And bring the sort of game where a publisher probably wouldn't want to take the risk. We love doing things that are fresh. I mean, it's great. We can do new ways of doing puzzles because we've got new sort of weapons in our armoury.
I think my favourite thing about Winter Melodias is how much the game has improved. Everyone on the team, rather than kind of resting on what we had before, has put in extra effort to make everything much more exciting, much more believable.
The weather mechanic, the season changing, is probably my favourite because it makes such a big difference to the gameplay.
Oh, it's definitely the globs, and you catch them in the vortex, the little sounds that they make, it's great.
My favourite part of the game has to be Magmok, I think. He's, in this game you start to see more of his character, and just the way he animates around the landscape is fantastic. He's larger than life, and he really adds something to the whole game.
One thing that's really important about the Lost in experience is that the player takes their time. Don't feel like you need to rush through it. Really kind of sit back and enjoy the environment and play around with everything and try and discover as much as you can.